Joining us on the podcast today, host of the Wally and Methot Show, we've got one half of the dynamic duo, Brent Wallace. How are you doing today?
That's because Matt's probably still in bed, Kyle.
Well, he's pulling double duty as an on-air talent these days there. So he's making his big Hollywood debuts, eh?
Yeah, he's doing fantastic. So good for him.
Yeah. So have you emotionally recovered from last night's ridiculous roller coaster ride of a Sens game? Looked like it was going to be a blowout. They clawed their way back into it, 7-5. Like, what was that like for you guys?
So it's such a great question because I don't know how to take that game. So either you're the fan that's like, oh, I just wanted to be exciting and they can lose, I'm okay with that. Or you're the fan that's like, they blew another game. They came back, they tied it at 4, and they had a chance to win it. And they continue to beat themselves by making mistakes. So I don't know where I fall on that, because forever and a day, I always just watched the game and I never really got either side of it. I just watched and reported on what I saw. It. I'm on the side that likes the excitement. I don't care if you lose. I just want you to play some fun hockey, because at the end of the day, it's just entertainment. There's nothing else. It is entertainment. So entertain me. Let me go home happy. I don't necessarily need a Hollywood ending. I just need some fun and a few more concession stands to be open, but that's a whole other story. So I will take the entertainment factor and Drake Batherson's first career hat trick any day over the loss.
Yeah, well, that seems to be it, right? Like, as you mentioned, fans and especially, Sens Twitter seems to fall into one of two camps there. It is either oh, you know what? This is a moral victory because they didn't roll over and die after the first one.
Yeah.
And then there's the other, glass half empty of like, this is just further evidence of the defensive inefficiencies on this team and, the amount of progress they still need to make if they truly want to become a contender. So is it just a case of the truth is probably somewhere in between those two camps and it can be a little bit of both, or?
They've got fun people to watch, right? They, need to see their top 6, obviously you get excited. Their bottom 6 is not as exciting. And I don't mean any disparaging to Nick Paul. I think I would put him in my top 6 if I had to speak about players that I like on the team. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, that bottom 6 needs to probably be rebuilt, or at least find some guys in Belleville that let them develop and eventually work their way. And like Alex Formanton, I like. There's a few other, but they don't have enough depth down the middle. And then again, they've got injuries, obviously, to Pinto and White, and now Clark Bishop, as well as that group. So you're missing a lot of space in the middle. They need a definitive second line center, or they need a third line guy that can play second line minutes, like a Mike Fisher type, which they all expected to be a third line guy and then eventually worked his way into be a second line center. But I love Shane Pinto, and I think he's going to be great there. I'm not sure if you want to be a contender, Shane Pinto is not your second line center for the time being. That's all I'm trying to say. I really like them. They've got great pieces going forward. And that blue line, outside the top 2, I don't know what to tell you. So it needs a lot of work. If they truly want to be contenders and not just try and fight for a playoff spot, they need to find probably 4 other defensemen to put in that spot. Well, which, let's be honest, isn't going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, well, that's just exactly it, right? Like, we're almost getting mixed messages here in the sense of you've got Melnyk with his unparalleled success years, and we're spending to the cap, and we barely tripped over, the cap floor this year to get into this season. You've got Dorian saying the rebuild is done. I don't want to talk about a rebuild anymore. We're there, but it's almost like we're getting a sense of deja vu here, because if you actually run down like this year compared to last year, the parallels are eerily similar. You beat the Leafs in the home opener. Sens are rumored to be, linked to every trade target known to mankind, but the reality of the trades they actually end up making are just depth or AHL players. There's question marks on defense with some of the veteran signings. Murray's injured again, one of the organization's top prospects. So this year it's Brandstrom. Last year it was Logan Brown. There's question marks around how they fit into their future. Like, have we seen this movie before?
Every year. There's always something. And that's the problem I have with the Ottawa Senators. There's always a tire fire that needs to be put out because of the way it's run at the top. And so it starts there. So if the owner doesn't go and pop off about the captain has to have a long-term deal and we're not going to give it to the bridge deal and all that stuff, that captaincy issue probably isn't a big deal going into this season. We stopped asking questions. We're like, they'll pick a captain when they pick a captain. It could easily be Thomas Chabot. It's probably Brady Tkachuk, but there's a lot of guys in that room that would say Thomas Chabot is a bona fide true leader in that group, and he would be on another team the captain. Mm-hmm. So you've got that. You've got the unparalleled success nonsense, which he uttered 3 years ago to try to drum up some business in Toronto when he held a big Toronto investor kind of meeting, sponsor meeting. So everything is done almost in spite of trying to watch this team put together some kind of effort on the ice. And then you've got the general manager going, well, the rebuild is over, so now everything is just great from here on out. Well, they've got a lot of pieces they still need to put into place to try and find this to be a contender. So let's not quite say the rebuild is over. So all he's trying to do is say, you know what? I've done everything I can. Now it's all on the players. Well, that's not true at all. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But bringing in guys who are on waiver claims or trading for using a seventh round pick to pick up a guy for depth is not all the answers to try and fill the voids. So it's almost like last year. And one thing you did leave out, which would be, let's get some veterans in here who can't really play, but say that they're still really good, and then find out 3 weeks later that they can't really play. And now we've got to try and move them again. So it remains a huge work in progress, but it's you got to separate the two to me. One is you got to like the way the team is playing on the ice and seeing how fun and innovative and how much energy they bring to every game. And then you've got all the front office stuff that just remains a debacle, and which is why people continue to be frustrated with the way that this organization's run.
Yeah. Well, speaking of on-ice product, a little bit of a troubling trend, we'll say, at least over the last 2 games, if you're a Sens fan, is the fact that the refs seem to be letting teams take some liberties with some of the Ottawa players. You've got
stop this, Kyle. Stop.
Wow. You got back-to-back games. They're getting absolutely plastered from behind with no calls. Okay. And then Jimmy's getting these embellishment calls. Brady's getting misconducts for like a roughing penalty. Like, what's going on here?
Okay. So you think the refs are out to get the Ottawa Senators?
I don't think that there's a conspiracy theory here, but do you not think that this is maybe a time where Dorian should be making some phone calls to possibly head officiating and playing a little bit of that gamesmanship and trying to get some calls?
I'm sure they do. But the other point is, how many other games have you sat down and watched start to finish around the National Hockey League in the last 3 nights?
Not very many.
Okay, right? So my point is, this happens everywhere across the league. And so because you're focused on the Ottawa Senators, you think it's a Senator-focused issue, and it isn't. I think the Nick Paul hit is a penalty from Ovechkin? Absolutely. Do I think Tim Stutzle should have gotten an embellishment call on both plays? Absolutely. I think he's a diver, and you can see it. The problem is he makes no effort to get up. All he needed to do was try to get away or make an effort to move his feet to get up, and he doesn't get the embellishment call. But sliding from blue line to blue line, and I know it's an exaggeration before I get tweeted at, is not going to help you in the favor of the officials. I don't believe the NHL referees give 2 shits about the Ottawa Senators and how they play on the ice. I don't think they're out to get them. I've seen every year everybody complains about the officiating, and they're always out to get the particular team. It's, Kyle, with all due respect, nonsense.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing, though, when it's going to be these embellishment calls and these, nothing came of the play, right? But when it's potentially injuries here, right? Like that Chris Kreider hit, then you've got the Ovechkin hit. Like, these are pretty blatant between the numbers or boarding calls here. Like, are those areas of concern where if you're the GM, are you not picking up the phone and saying, like, someone's going to get seriously hurt here if we don't address this moving forward?
But that happens everywhere, every time. I don't remember all the I guess the backlash, if you will, or all the talk about when Josh Norris drove somebody from Montreal, if I'm not mistaken, in an exhibition game into the boards, which is roughly the same thing as Alex Ovechkin on Nick Paul. I don't remember the Ottawa fans saying, my God, he should be suspended for 2 games. I don't remember a peep. So you have to take it both ways. So yes, there are going to be boarding calls that go unmissed. I don't believe they're all against the Ottawa Senators.
No. So going back to our friend Timmy there, who, again, as you mentioned it, clearly is getting a bit of a reputation, and it's not just amongst, Ottawa Senators fans. It's, Montreal Canadiens fans are chirping in here, some of the other fan bases around the league. Like, this is a guy who has yet to play a full complement of games in the NHL here, and he already has that. Like, is this something that if you are the Senators management and the coaching staff, you're now immediately trying to address and groom out of him, or is this just growing pains for a young kid?
No, he'll figure it out. And we've seen this a few times. Like if I'm not mistaken, Sidney Crosby got kind of labeled that early on in his career, didn't see the benefit of it out on a few of those calls. Brady Tkachuk, to me, I remember, didn't get calls, didn't get diving as necessarily that often, but didn't get the calls go his way because of the way he would easily lose his footing.
I was going to say, he's a bit of a Bambi on skates at times to begin with there.
So they'll figure it out. They somehow Tim Stutzle is going to know what needs to be done and what doesn't. And I'm sure he'll get a talk either from Pierre Dorian or from the league about just exactly what he can and can't do on the ice. I don't think it's a huge problem. And in that game, which gets kind of overlooked by the embellishment, is I think he drew 4 penalties in that one game. So he'll be fine. He'll figure it out. Just, you can't lay on the ice and show up the referees. You just can't do it. And so if you don't want to get a diving call, just get up.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point too, because I mean, I don't think it's an actually official stat that you can easily find, but Stutzle has been drawing more than his fair share of penalties. Now, not just that game, but in other games as well too. So that's actually a positive to his game. So you got to kind of take the good with the bad there. So like, what would be the messaging if you were head coach, if you were DJ Smith, and you've now got this young player who's drawing lots of penalties, but is maybe earning a reputation that will hurt you down the stretch? Like, what do you say to him?
Just move your feet. Right. You can't just lay on the ice. So you got to get up. And so people are going to get mad. Well, what's he going to do with the stick between his legs? I get it. But at some point, you've got to try and find a way. You can't just lay on the ice all afternoon and go, well, there's a stick there. You have to make the effort to get back into the play. That's all he's got to do. He'll be fine. I will tell you, Brady Tkachuk, if I'm not mistaken, led the NHL last year in penalties drawn as well. It's a team. One of the reasons is because they're quick. They move their feet and they're always up the ice. So this team will be well set for kind of that type of play. It's Tim Stutzle will figure it out. They'll be fine. They'll get the power play. And eventually when Shane Pinto and everybody gets healthy, they should have a daunted power play unit.
There we go. Well, you got Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal all in the bottom of the Atlantic right now. So not exactly a hot start to any of the Canadian or Quebec teams.
Okay, wait. I just talked to a Leaf fan who's a diehard Leaf fan, good friend of mine. And at the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken, everybody said that, hey, the Leafs got a shot. The Leafs got it. If you're a Leaf fan, you're thinking they got it. Now he's like, man, I didn't say that. I think they can make it in the playoffs. So I'm like, okay, so now we're 5 games in and you were already saying, no, I didn't think they were a contender. I just thought they could contend for a playoff spot. How quickly the Leaf fans have changed their tune now that we've seen there's a bunch of holes in their game as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So here's the question I have for you, Kyle. And I said this on this show the other day. Would you rather be a fan of the Ottawa Senators right now or the Toronto Maple Leafs? Well, one is supposed to win a Stanley Cup. The other one is supposed to be, again, one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. I would take being an Ottawa Senator fan over what is going on in the Big Smoke any day.
Yeah, well, I think your co-host Matt or Mark ended up hitting the nail on the head. A couple of years down the line, it's going to be that Ottawa Senators team who's got that bright future, because now suddenly the narrative around Toronto has changed from, all right, Stanley Cup contender, it's Austin Matthews, Marner, Nylander, this is our core, to, all right, maybe we want to explore some options around Marner before that no movement clause kicks in. Like, so to your point, it's the perfect walk back of some of these lofty goals that the Toronto Maple Leafs had preseason. And I mean, I don't want to say that it's the new, Madden curse here, the curse of the Amazon all or nothing series. But I mean, when you look at the amount of off ice drama, pressure, other things that they sort of lumped onto this group as far as, okay, we fell short last year. This is going to be pushing our chips to the middle this year. Let's go. Like, who would you be most concerned about right now if you are a fan base? Is it Ottawa? Is it Montreal? Is it Toronto? Like, Montreal went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, injuries granted, but I don't think anyone saw them starting at 1-5 either. Like, is it time to panic for any of them?
Okay, we can relate this Montreal start to an Ottawa start, and that is 2017. They weren't expected to do very much and end up overtime, double overtime goal away from the cup final, right? So this is kind of like Montreal. Excuse me. Now they've got, obviously, we can say no David Desharnais and no Shea Weber and obviously no Carey Price, and they're struggling in goal. And there's a bunch of issues they had, but they had those issues even before the start of last season. They managed to find a way to get themselves into a playoff spot and into the cup final. Montreal, I think, will figure it out. I just don't think that they were ever as good as that particular run said they were. So they're building. They've got pieces with Caulfield and Suzuki. I still like their blue line, regardless of them not having Shea Weber at the moment and maybe never again. Toronto, the issue I have with Toronto, and that reminds me of, I'll say mid 2000s with the Ottawa Senators, when they had great teams and everybody kept telling me every year, this is the team that's going to win the Stanley Cup this year. And I was like, can we just wait a minute here? There is something fundamentally wrong to me with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I don't watch every game to know exactly how it plays out, but I don't like their blue line and I don't like their goaltending. And you can't win in the NHL without being able to stop the puck. It's too hard to score 7 goals a night. So I think Toronto is the concern, that they've got to find a way to get out of this. Now, are they going to win 20 games in a row? Maybe, but I really doubt it. The thing is, people are saying, oh, well, Tampa's in the same spot as Toronto. Well, Tampa has 2 Stanley Cup rings on their fingers. They struggled this year. It's not really that big of a deal. They've already done what they're supposed to do. You haven't done anything since 67, as we continue to remind you of, and you haven't gotten out of the first round in 17 years. So Toronto, I don't know what the answer is. Do they have to split up one of the 4 to get a piece in return? Maybe. But when Jason Spezza is your best player at 38 years old and he's on the 4th line, something needs to change. Sheldon Keefe comes out and calls out your best players, which he has not done that I can remember anytime publicly. Says that this has been going on for a while. It's been trying to be addressed in the room. And now the Toronto Maple Leafs management and Sheldon Keefe have nothing else left to do to try and get them going other than to publicly call them out. That's concerning.
Yeah. Well, here in Ottawa, our front office recently inked some new contracts. Montreal and Toronto, some real question marks around their front office and how much longer they could be part of that future. Like, who has a shorter leash in your mind right now? Is it Bergevin in Montreal, or is it going to be Dubas in Toronto? Who's on a bigger hot seat?
Great question. I don't think it's Dubas. I'm going to, if it's anybody, I think it's Bergeron. But again, I mean, he can't control the Carey Price situation. He can't control the Shea Weber situation. Those are the big ones. The whole Kotkaniemi offer sheet thing, that's on him, no question, because of the way he went at Aho. So has he made some blunders? Sure. I'm not sure that there's any GM that hasn't made some mistakes, but I just feel like, I think this is his last year of his deal, possibly. I could be wrong, but I think that he could be the one that gets relieved first. There's something about Kyle Dubas I think they still really like. I've met him, I've spoken to him a few times, and I know some people that work in the organization. He is very well liked, very well respected. There's a lot of stuff we don't see that he does and how well he takes care of that team. Maybe there's a mistake in having to sign the big $4 to $40 million. Sure. But if they would have won to a Stanley Cup final last year, would anybody have said anything? They would have said, that's right, he built the team right, and that, look at how well he's done. So sometimes there needs to be a little bit of patience, and fans don't have any patience. And I don't blame them. Media don't have any patience either. That's what makes it fun, because we get to challenge and be the quarterback every day and say, how could you do this? But we don't know what the plan is. And none of us are good enough to be the general manager. So we should probably just sit and watch for a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. They're throwing jerseys on the ice in Toronto. At least in Ottawa here, throwing bras on the ice, right? So that's got to be a bit of a
I just want to, I would like to have seen that all play out and how that whole scenario went down. But we did, like, there wasn't that long ago where Sens fans were throwing jerseys on the ice too. So we can't sit on our high horse here and say, well, we'd never do that in Ottawa, because it did play out here. And Meth and I have had this conversation about him being a player, and it's bothersome and upsetting to see that. It doesn't bug me. You're a fan. That's your jersey. You can do what you want with it as far as I'm concerned. And if you want to throw it on the ice, you throw it on the ice. You're allowed to voice your displeasure that's a silent protest. You're not hurting anybody. If that's how mad you are, then you can, for me, you can do it. I get the player part of it because you never let the jersey hit the floor. The crest never touches the floor, all that stuff. I get it. But to you, it's a whole lot different than it is to the fan.
Yeah. Circling back to a point you actually just mentioned there, though, with Bergevin and the obvious, Carolina Kotkaniemi saga that went on, like, now that they've gone out, they've had the homecoming, the revenge game, Carolina goes and builds did the Habs win last night website, all the social media trolling, all of that. Like, are we now at a point where you're like, okay, we've beaten this into, I liked everything now, but let's move on from it? Or are you like, let's keep this going, dial it up, I want more of this?
And I'll go back to, this is an entertainment business. So if people are entertained by this, and I get the sense that a lot of people are, I'm all for it. The more that you can, and Methot agrees, like, let's entertain people. So remember when the storm surge in Carolina and Don Cherry got upset and called them a bunch of jerks? Yeah. People loved it. Like, what is wrong with having a little fun in your life? So it's not all about just lighting up that red light and winning 3-2 or 2-1 in a shootout. That's not that much fun. But if you can poke fun at another team, and it's not in a, I guess, a derogatory manner, but just some chirping, I love it. I would do that all day long. And if you can find the right mix of that, I think it's money.
Yeah, there you go. So you just need to take over a team social media account there, and you can.
I'd be fired in the first day. I would say something and be like, Brent, we gotta let you go. I'm like, fine, I get it.
It was a good 6-hour run we had.
Yeah, you're gonna have to clean out your desk.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, speaking of entertainment, Ottawa did just have their first ever Oktoberfest event. Didn't see any Stutzle appearances, but they had some interesting hats they were getting handed out. Like, is this something Ottawa needs to do more of? Like, what other theme nights, if you were in charge of that department of the Ottawa Senators, what would you be rolling out?
Oh, I'd have a Cape Breton kitchen party night. They used to have it actually a long time ago. They'd bring in, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there'd be a fiddler come in who was very good. And I think it would be like a Cape Breton or an Irish night. I don't know. To me, those nights are hokey. You got like a $2 hat that you'll never wear again, and somebody will put on eBay for $10. I would like them to spend a bit more on their game day production and promotion stuff. The Oktoberfest, outside of you mentioning it and seeing a host or a couple of pictures posted of hats, I couldn't have told you what happened.
Yeah. Well, I think the real allure was they finally made $5 beers pregame for it there. So at least they had that going for them rather than the $14 tall boys on the inside, right?
Well, then that's just like, and I got yelled at the other day for making a comment that I thought concession prices were way too high and ticket prices are way too high. I understand, by the way, and I know you probably don't want to go here, that ticket prices are low generally compared to the rest of the National Hockey League. But if you don't have people going to the game, then your ticket prices are too high. So even if you didn't like the owner, you could still go to a game if you actually like the price of the ticket. It's the same with anything. You don't want to go to a movie because you think it's too expensive. You don't go to the movie. Mm-hmm. Concessions are another thing to me where this year, I don't know if people have noticed, and I'm pretty sure they used to include the tax in the concessions and now they're on top of. So they've raised the price without really trying to tell you they've raised the price. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things that they've done that really irk me. If you want people to drive to Canada to watch this hockey game, you can't charge them whether it's $12 or $30 for parking. Charge them, I don't know, $5 at most, just enough to cover plowing the yard in the middle of winter and laying down some salt. I don't like us forcing people to pay for parking when there's really no other way to get there except one bus. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of missteps that I think the organization takes, and it just flies in the face of trying to generate fan interest in this organization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, attendance has been something that has been a hot topic around the league. I'm of the opinion that there's not really an issue here because of a litany of factors here. You even look at last night's game, 11,000. The other night's Rangers game at Madison Square Garden only had 13,000. So it's not just an Ottawa problem. This is people's comfort levels coming out of a pandemic. But do you think this has been overblown, or do you think that this is truly a reflection of the relationship that ownership has with the community and the length they still need to go to mend those relationships?
All right. So first and foremost, I will not downplay the pandemic and the effect it has on ticket sales. I think that affects it greatly, and I am not discounting that. But I will tell you that one, Ottawa has one of the highest vaccination rates in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Two, we saw a decline in attendance before this pandemic. And so when you're drawing 8,000 a night and you haven't had hockey in your city for, I don't know, 500 days or however long it was before you were allowed to go to a last game, this tells me something, and it should be a lot of red flags. MSG, I'm not sure what happened, but I do know the smallest attendance outside of Ottawa in Canada at the moment, I think, was Calgary at 15,000. Maybe Winnipeg was, I'm not sure what Winnipeg is because they don't have a big building. It is a deep concern to see 8,000 people showing up on an average. It's not just once, Kyle, right? But twice we're at 8,000, another time we're at 11. This is a huge discrepancy from COVID to 8,000 people. I get COVID will have some impact, but it doesn't empty your building by half. Now, there's a lot of businesses that were struggling during the pandemic. I get all of that. This is the smallest ticket base in the National Hockey League. One of the reasons is because of businesses can't, your biggest employer is the federal government, which can't do any sponsorship. So they can't help out. But there's lots of businesses that are staying away from the Ottawa Senators. That's a huge problem that doesn't really seem to get noticed because we just kind of go about our business. There's no ads on the helmet stickers, right? They're actually just Sens logos. That's because they haven't sold it. You look on the side of the building, they have lots of extra spots for advertising. That doesn't happen. Center ice, there are 2 Bell spots, a Bell one and a TSN. That's the same company, which means they're not paying double to be on center ice. There's lots of things that are going on in that building that businesses are staying away from. So you want to isolate yourself from the business side of things in Ottawa and try to be a professional hockey team. That is a bit of a struggle to come back from.